Hi everyone, welcome to episode 21 of Show Me How It's Done. I'm excited to have you join me today, whether you're live or watching the replay. I hope that you enjoy today's technique that features this beautiful stamp set called Wild Roses. Luckily, this guy is carrying over to our next annual catalog, so you'll have plenty of time to recreate these cards if you'd like to order the stamp set after this event. So today I'm going to show you how to make a couple different background techniques. The technique that I'm featuring is called an Emboss Resist, and I'm going to show you from scratch how we do that, and then you can make these cards at home. So these are the two that we're working on today. However, I'm going to have a few other pointers for you as we go. So what you'll need to start with is some pieces of Whisper White cardstock or basic white cardstock, whatever you have left over. So these are going to measure 4 inches by 5 1/4, and these are going to be what we're working on for the stamping. So I'm going to do 2 of them simultaneously because I want to show you what the technique looks like with a white embossing powder and with a black. The cards that I've made are with black, but you can easily recreate them on your own. So I have 2 of them. You'll only need 1 unless you want to make both of the cards that I have handy, and who knows, you may. So we're gonna grab these pieces and mount your giant stamp onto a block. This is also a nice stamp to use with your Stamparatus. If you have it, then you're not having to hold the stamp all on its own. You can just quickly flip the flap down and do it over and over again. So totally up to you. We're going to do these one at a time. So the first stamping that I'm going to do is for my black embossing powder. Sorry, I gotta grab that. So I'm grabbing my sticky Versamark ink. I'm going to stamp all over this image. You want to make sure all the flowers are covered. And then you're going to turn it and set it down onto your paper, okay? Just in one swift motion. And then you can just press it down to make sure all those sections are covered. I sometimes grab a little foam mat or a catalog to put under my workspace, and then that means that I know all the spots are reaching the stamp, but I also didn't want to get a catalog sticky, so that's why I'm not doing that today. So you can start with whichever embossing powder you want. I guess maybe I'll do white first. So we're just going to sprinkle this over top of the entire page, and it'll be a little challenging to see, but hopefully you can see where I have embossing powder on here and where I don't. Okay. And just tap, tap, tap. If you have any fine spots, you can always grab a makeup brush and get rid of those. But your page should be covered in flowers at this point. Be very careful because that embossing powder can easily be wiped off at the moment. So we need to heat it for that embossing powder to set. But the easiest way to do that is to have both of my pieces ready to go. So I'm quickly going to do my black background exactly the same as I did my white. So stamping all over my Versamark ink, stamping down, and press. Okay. You can now move this giant stamp out of your way. You won't need it anymore unless you're recreating multiples of these. I've got my black embossing powder. I'm going to shake that all over. Make sure all of my paper is covered and tap it off. Okay, so my next job will be to get my heat tool, and this is where it's going to get a little loud, so I'm just going to tell you what you're going to see before I actually start. So right now my embossing powder is being held on just by that sticky ink. If I was to rub a finger over top of it, it would just brush off. So I'll show you on Here's one that I made a mistake on. So if I was to rub it right now, all of my beautiful powder would be moved around. It's not set. So we need to bring in a heat gun and basically melt those little embossing powders into place. Okay, so when I turn this on, I'm going to just kind of gently move back and forth across my picture, and as soon as I start seeing my colors change from this kind of powdery look to a shiny sheen, then I'm going to make sure to move on, because you don't want to overheat a section, otherwise it can melt kind of more than you really want it to. But I'm going to do that. I'll stop halfway through and show you the difference, but you won't be able to hear me right now. Okay, so at this point I have done half of my project, and you can probably see right now the top part looks really dark. That's because all of those embossing powders have melted into place, and my bottom still looks rather grayish. So I'm going to just move this close to the camera for you, let it settle, so you can see kind of the shiny sheen on the top of the card and the dull part on the bottom. So we want to keep heating until the whole paper looks nice and shiny. Okay, so the black is what I love to show you guys the embossing melting on. Actually, I love gold because it turns from a really kind of brownish ugly color to a gorgeous gold color, but you won't really be able to see the difference as much when I emboss or heat emboss my white paper. So I'm going to do that really quickly, but you will be able to see the technique a lot clearer on a white page. There we go. So we've got our beautiful white background and our black background right now, and I'm going to walk you through how to do the emboss resist technique. So I've done it in two different color combinations. I'll just demonstrate one of them for you, but you can easily replicate it with the opposite color scheme. So the one that I'm going to show you here, I'll show you the blue one. And I have chosen to use Pacific Point, Granny Apple Green, and Coastal Cabana for this set. So what you need is a little sponge piece. You can grab one of our round sponges and just chop it up. I took one of my punches and just punched out a coordinating cardstock piece so that now whenever I look at this, I know exactly what color I need of ink to coordinate with. Okay, so we're going to start with our lightest color first. So that would be my Coastal Cabana. So this is going to be the color that's most easily colored over. If you decide later on that you've put way too much of it on, we can cover it up with some of the darker colors. So what I'm going to do is just start it as a focal point, kind of splashed straight across my page. There's no rhyme or reason to this. You do not have to get it inside certain flowers. You just want a whole brushed look kind of across the top of your card and in a couple random places along your card as well. Okay, so I'm just going to do the exact same thing on my white so that you can see it. And you can see how the white gives you a totally different look than the black when you're actually adding these embossing inks onto it. Very subtle, I think. But I was playing with black today. However, you'll see the emboss resist a lot easier on here. Okay, so my next color choice would probably be the Granny Apple Green. And here is where I'm going to start giving some of its own space, but also going across sections of my Coastal Cabana, because it will actually give me not only 1, 2, 3 colors in my card, but it'll give me 5 when I start overlapping some of the color shades. Okay, so we're just going to grab a little bit more green in here. Maybe throw this down at the bottom. So you just want to make sure that any white space on your card is very saturated with the ink. Okay, don't worry if you miss anything on top of the flowers, because that actually gets just wiped off. But you want anything that is the white paper under here to be fully saturated with color. Okay. Another tip is just to have really juicy ink pads for this technique, because the sponges kind of soak up a lot of your colors on you. So last but not least, I'm going to grab my Pacific Point and just fill in any spaces that are missing colors. Or if I realize, hey, I have way too much, green here or something, then I'm going to cover some of that with the dark Pacific Point and give myself another color shade in here. But we really want these colors just to be blended all together. There we go. Okay, so I think that looks really nice. You can see the difference in my papers already. You're probably looking at this white one and thinking, oh, that's just kind of a mess of colors, because the color kind of looks like it's gone over the white embossing powder. But the beauty of embossing powders and inks, these ones specifically, is that you can just grab a damp, not wet, Kleenex or towel or something. You can even grab your chamois if it's, barely wet. This one hardly has any water on it. You don't want anything soaking, because this is of course paper and we don't want to go through it. So the reason I chose to do white is it will be very uneventful when I show you how to clean this one off, because the black is dark. You don't see the ink that's resting on it. So when I take my little cloth and just gently rub over top, it's taking off all that extra ink that's sitting on top of my black flowers, but you don't see that. So why I wanted to show you the white is it's very evident right now how colored some of my flowers are just by the inks on top of them. When I take my cloth and start rubbing, you can instantly see that white cleaning off, and all that remains is the color sitting underneath. So as we keep going, my white is just becoming more and more vibrant. You can see up here, it's beautiful. Down here is still messy. So we're going to keep going. And then you're left with a gorgeous white background of flowers and subtle colors hiding in there. Okay, so all the color has been lifted off of the embossed image, and all that you have left is the colors that are soaked into the paper in the background here. All right, so let's build these cards. What what I used for this other card, if you're wondering, because we're not actually doing it together, I'll give you those colors. I ended up using 4 just because I couldn't decide how to do it. So I started with Daffodil Delight, and I did the exact same kind of very broad spectrum coloring with that. So Daffodil Delight and Mango Melody. They're very similar, but I liked the contrast of this light yellow with kind of the mango colors. So I still chose to use both. Then I added Flirty Flamingo. This one was gorgeous when I blended it on top of the daffodil and the mango. It gave me just a beautiful sunset kind of shade. And then to finish off, I used Calypso Coral only in a couple spots in the corners to kind of just bring your eyes deeper into the image itself. Okay, so once more, Calypso Coral, Flirty Flamingo, Mango Melody, and Daffodil Delight. Those are the 4 colors that I used for this sunset looking project. But let's finish these ones off. So I had a lot of fun playing with opposites, as you can tell. I used a black background for one and a white background for the other, and then I made sure that my sentiments were opposites as well. So we're going to do the same thing for these card bases. So I have 2 card bases. Both of them measure 4 1/4 by 11, and I've put a score mark at 5 1/2. So we're going to fold those both in half, find our bone folders, press that down. Okay. So it is completely up to you whether you decide to put your white card on the white background, or whether you decide, hey, I would like to switch it up and maybe put my black flowers on the white and my white on the black. Totally up to you. I think for this one, because I've done so many other opposites, I'm just going to go colors complement the background. So I am attaching these just with some tape. You can use seal, you can use glue, but just some sort of flat adhesive to get these onto the backs. And if you want, you could also maybe cut an extra piece of white for the inside of your card, because the black is rather challenging to write on. So if you want to do that, you would cut it at 4 inches by 5 1/4, same as our front pieces. There we go. So here are my beautiful opposite cards. One white, one black. They are gorgeous like this. You could really just add any sentiment that you wanted to it, but I chose to find my Happy Thoughts stamp set. Thought this one maybe got missed in some of my class prep, but it just has so many beautiful sayings. It has your standards, happy birthday, thank you, congrats, but it also has a really heartfelt set of them. So the one I chose was today is great because it's all about you, the great person you are and the great things you do. I thought it would be great to use either for just a celebration of somebody or a birthday. And then you've got some really kind of subtle sentiments too in here that I'm just gonna hold up so you can read. There's just wanted to send some happy thoughts your way, or the little things you do so well and so often make a big difference to so many people. I think that one's a really nice encouragement sentiment. But I chose to do the today is great one. So we're going to play with opposites. For 2 sets of cards, you're going to need 4 little scraps of paper. So for our sentiment piece, you'll need 1 black and 1 white. These measure 1 inch by 4 1/4, and we're going to be embossing on both of them. And then the background layer behind it, you'll need 1 black and 1 white, 1 1/4 by 4 1/4. Okay, so they're the same length, just not the same width. And then of course they would be the opposites with each other. Okay, so I'll show you quickly just how to do the sentiment, maybe just on one of these cards. So you don't have to watch me do everything, but I would just have my base layer here, bring back in my Versamark ink onto my stamp. This will fit perfectly in this little space. And then we've got our embossing powder. So if it's in the tray, you can just kind of scoop it over. And if it's not, then of course you just pour it from the container. Okay, oh, you got very messy with my fingers. There we go. Perfect. And then with my heat tool, I could just come in here, and again, we're looking for that change in color. There we go. And then to attach it, I used flat adhesive for this piece. And we're putting it straight onto that background piece. Remember not to do a border on the left or right, just on the top and bottom. And then we're grabbing some dimensionals to pop this up on our project. Like so, and you can put it right in the middle of your card, you can put it bottom, top, whatever you like. I just thought I wanted to feature the technique that we did, so I left it a lot of the flowers open and available for us to see. So here you've got 2 complete opposite cards using the exact same color scheme, but I used a white background and a black. Same idea, but very different. You can bring in that other, here we'll put it here and compare. You can bring in your other color scheme and make an exact same card, but a completely different look. Or if you want to perhaps step your cards up a little bit, we can add some backgrounds to the paper. So instead of a 4-inch wide base here, you're just going to have 3 3/4 by 5 inches. The black would be the 4 inches by 5 1/4. And then our base would be either Flirty, Flamingo, or Coastal Cabana. And it gives you just a really fun look for your cards. So you can see the difference. Hopefully when you add that background, it just kind of pops your card out just a tiny bit more. Like so. So I hope you guys had fun with today's technique. I really love the Emboss Resist. You can use it on all sorts of images. Perhaps you have just a single flower stamp and you want to add some sponging over it, but it just really gives you that opportunity to highlight a background look and still have a really shiny embossed image on top of it. And then these are just some ideas for you to play around with. If you decide to use other color combinations, I'd love to see them. Make sure to post, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Bye!